Well, hi there, and welcome back to another episode of Let's Talk Real Estate Investing. I'm your host, Sharon Vornholt, and I'm so happy you're tuning in today. My guest is a friend, and she's Nashville investor, Cindy Maxson, and we are going to talk about tiny homes, which is a really hot topic now. Cindy started as an investor 10 years ago by purchasing 5 foreclosure homes and renting those out. She completed over a dozen flips and 2 new construction projects. And in 2016, she purchased a vacant rundown boarding house, turned it into her personal home while building out the second story as an Airbnb. And this is just kind of me hitting the highlights. So she has a short-term vacation rental there called Chateau on Monroe, where they hosted 100 events prior to COVID. Cindy's also a licensed realtor. She's very knowledgeable in the probate niche. And as I said, she purchased her first tiny home in the mountains as her newest rental. She has 7 adult children and 2 grandchildren. And her goal is to build a solid business in real estate as an investor agent, along with building a business legacy for her children. So, welcome to the show, Cindy.
Thank you so much, Sharon. It's great to be here.
Now, I just touched kind of on the highlights, but I know you've done all sorts of built spec homes, bought land, all sorts of things. So let's go back just a little bit and give people a little bit more of your backstory.
Okay. I started with those homes that I purchased. They were foreclosures coming out of the crash of '08. Turned them into rentals, and they were golden. Back in those days, it was hard to fail as an investor, but that never lasts, that environment. So I branched out. I tried new things. I did some flips. I got some partners, a couple of people one in Chattanooga, one in the Nashville area. We did flips. We did a couple of new constructions. And then along the way, I bought my house here. And that's what started me down the path of short-term vacation rentals, STRP. So those are Airbnbs. I got Monroe here, and it was in the worst shape imaginable. It had been vacant for over a year. There were no utilities, and yet homeless people were living here. They were doing drugs. It was kind of a crack house. So I could write a book just on that one experience, but we gutted it. We took the roof off, we took the second story off, and when we built it back, that second story was designed to be a vacation rental unit. And we gave it a name, Chateau on Monroe. And that started me down that path of running that type of business. And, we, in the beginning, we just failed forward, and we learned a lot by trial and error. But it quickly turned into something that I loved. I loved watching these groups. Our bread and butter at Chateau on Monroe was bachelor and bachelorette, big family reunions, big like women's retreats, girls' weekend reunions. We got a lot of groups of older ladies and men, who had they were having a college reunion. And we got to know these people and love them, and they kind of became like family to us. And it was such a good experience that I really started looking for other opportunities in that same arena. One thing led to another, and we discovered I had been looking at tiny homes online, doing research, and just Providence, by the grace of God, we hooked up with the Retreat. The Retreat is a development out on Monteagle Mountain. We went up there, we looked at these tiny homes, and we were just blown away, as was everyone else who went up there and looked at the property. So we, long story short, we got one under contract. It was the model home at the Retreat, the original Retreat, which by then had branched into 3 separate locations of Retreat properties. So we got that under contract. It took a while to close, but we ended up closing on March the 18th, which is, I think, the Wednesday after COVID hit us all full in the face that previous weekend. So the timing was wonderful because just like everybody else in this country, you know, our stress levels ramped up really fast, and having this place to go away from Nashville, away from the stress of COVID, was just a godsend for us. And then we put it on the in-house rental management program. So that began in August, and it has cash flowed every single month. We pull up the calendar every day and look at it. And just this morning, we got an additional $500 in bookings for the month of January and December, which is very unusual. Those are normally our down months, you know, as vacation rentals.
So let's backtrack a little bit here. So did you have a reason for buying an existing home rather than to build one?
Are you talking the
tiny home? The tiny home.
Yes, we did. I evaluated, there were 2 tiny homes that were already in place, and we looked at them, and the agent that we were working with, Jason White with Parks Realty, I'll never forget when he turned to us and he said, you know, the model home is for sale and you might want to check that out because it perks for 2 bedrooms. So we did that, looked at that property. It was 1.7 acres, so it was a much larger lot. And the fact that it perks for 2 bedrooms means that we have the option, and this is our plan, to put a second tiny home on that same lot here probably sometime in 2021. So that gave us room for expansion. That particular piece of property just spoke to me as far as potential. So that's why. Plus, it came already furnished, so we didn't have to buy furniture. So.
Well, and I would imagine it looks to me like it has a lot of amenities that maybe you would have had to have added had you built your own. It came with those.
Yes, this development is special. The developer is Chip Hayes. He had a fantastic vision, and he brought it to life. First of all, the property that he bought on the mountain had a specialness about it. So it had a creek running through it, and it had a waterfall. So he went in, divided that property into 70, I think, lots, and started marketing those. And the amenities are what make it just magical. Mm-hmm. He put in underground utilities, so you don't have to see a bunch of, you know, utility poles all over the place. He went in with a minimalist mindset. And what I mean by that is he determined that they were going to disturb the environment as little as possible. So they only cut down trees when they absolutely have to. So he retained that wonderful forest atmosphere. He put in hiking trails around the entire perimeter of the property. If I had to guess, I would say that's probably 2 miles of hiking trails on the perimeter, maybe more. And then he put in a trail down to the falls, which is a more strenuous hike. So you can get in a lot of aerobics going down to those waterfall and back. And it's beautiful. He did not put in street lights. So at night when we walk around up and down the roads, it's just wonderful. You see the stars. We never see the stars here in Nashville because of all the light pollution. He made it a gated community, which really helps because we get a lot of families in there with kids, and it helps give them a sense of security.
Okay. So what would you say as far, your place is located how far from Nashville?
It's an hour and a half.
An hour and a half from Nashville. Okay. Mm-hmm. So is it kind of positioned between Chattanooga and Nashville, or?
It is. If you go down Interstate 24 from Nashville toward Chattanooga, it's probably, it's a little more than halfway between Nashville and Chattanooga. And eventually, if you know what I'm talking about, when you go down 24, you have to cross Mount Eagle Mountain. So you just get off at the exit there at the top of Mount Eagle. It's really well situated, I think, because it's within driving range of Nashville and Chattanooga. But also, we meet a lot of people up there who've driven in from Memphis, Knoxville. So it's within fairly easy driving distance of, you know, those four major cities.
Okay, so that's interesting because I would assume that you got a little bit better price getting outside of Nashville a little bit, because Nashville prices are kind of high, but you're still close enough that it's an easy weekend escape from someone for someone if they lived in Nashville or.
Absolutely. We just drove back yesterday. There was one vacant night left in October, and we grabbed it. And we went down Sunday night, drove back yesterday, and you know we're used to it now. But an hour and a half is not a long drive. Right. I mean, there are people, you know, if you live around Nashville, in one of the counties surrounding Nashville, and you drive to work in Nashville, there are days when you'll spend an hour and a half in the car if you hit a bad traffic day. You know, mm-hmm. So it's not a bad drive at all, and it's just a really convenient location.
So have people told you what amenities are important to them? I mean, obviously, I would think the gated part would be important. Mm-hmm. Have they expressed to you, I wish I had this, or I'm so glad I have this? You know, what feedback are you getting from people?
When we're up there, we walk around all the time. It's not a huge development. It's easy walk. We'll walk down the road and pass the picnic pavilion. I forgot about that. He put in a picnic pavilion with a fire pit. There are 2 community fire pits. There is a playground for the kids. Mm-hmm. So we walk around. It's just a beautiful walk. And we meet people all the time because there are a lot of people who rent in the retreat, and they give us just, I honestly cannot remember getting a piece of negative feedback about where we are located. Now, the people in the new development down the road from us, it's called Water's Edge, you know, their feedback is, you know, there's so much construction, but that will settle down and eventually go away. So we're the original retreat, and there's almost very little construction remaining, and it's just peace and quiet. And people, the feedback is almost entirely positive. They love everything about the tiny home community at the retreat. It's called the Retreat at Deer Lick Falls.
Okay. So let's talk a little bit about the numbers, because that was one concern that I hear from people all the time. Are the HOA fees going to be high? Are there HOA fees? What's typical for those tiny home developments? And how, if someone were to look into buying one, let's talk about gross income and net, you know, what could they expect to make? Because I know people that invest in other areas like Chicago, where it's really common to get $400 or $500, maybe even $600 a month cash flow in some cases. It's not common in my area. So what do the numbers look like for the tiny homes?
Well, when we were looking at purchasing, the retreat development gave us a pro forma document where they had already gone in and analyzed what in their opinion, these properties were capable of doing. So they theorized that if you have a mortgage in place, that you could expect around a $4,000 per year cash flow. If you bought your property outright, paid cash for it, it was more like, I think it was $25,000 a year. So those numbers looked really good. But as you know, Sharon, as investors, you don't ever trust the numbers that the seller is feeding you. So we went in and did our own research, and my numbers came back, pretty close to that. So that was enough for me to pull the trigger and decide that, this is a worthy investment. And after that, it was just a matter of monitoring how the tiny home performed in reality. And what I have discovered, to my immense surprise and pleasure, is that it is actually outperforming that pro forma that they gave us initially.
So what do you think the reason for that is?
COVID.
Higher occupancy, maybe, or
COVID in the short term. In the long term, the fact that these tiny homes are excellent, affordable second vacation homes for people. Where else can you pick up a vacation home for? We paid $170,000 for ours. A vacation home, if you get anywhere near a lake or a body of water or the beach or anything like that, or even the mountains, I mean, you can look at spending $500,000.
Mm-hmm.
So, that is a real huge draw. The other thing is these tiny homes are, they're minimalist footprint. They are simple. They attract people with that mindset who want a simpler lifestyle, who want to downsize, who are ready to be rid of their McMansions, and just have a simple place to live so that you can spend your money more on experiences and creating memories rather than, accumulating things. So they appeal to those kind of people. Millennials love these because they are environmentally responsible. And then back to COVID, with the advent of COVID, people have come to understand that they do not have to work in a separate location. You can work from home successfully. I mean, we were all, or not all of us, but a lot of people were forced into that environment.
Mm-hmm.
And, so I think that has opened people's minds to the possibility that you can live and work from home. And these tiny homes are a perfect solution for that. We have run into people who live there, either short-term or long-term, who have told us, this is my home here. I'm working from home right now. Another little piece of the puzzle I neglected to mention is Chip, and this is crucial. He went in and he found high-speed internet service and installed that into the retreat. So out there on the mountain, cell service is very, very sketchy. But once you get into that retreat with Wi-Fi and high-speed internet, it's just wonderful. It's the same as our service here in Nashville as far as speed goes. So that's huge too.
That's very unusual.
Mm-hmm.
Now you have, you said it's managed by the community there. So let's talk about the numbers there. If we're talking about, so you said you outperformed their performa. So is it like, would we say you're making net 400 a month, or what's your average cash flow at this time?
As of right now, I want to, a caveat is we're still fairly new. We just went on the rental program in August. So just as an example, we ran our numbers, and I determined that I need to pull in $1,000 per month to pay for all of the expenses of that tiny home, the mortgage, the electric bill, the management fee. The management fee is 20%. So the retreat vacations in-house rental program takes 20% of every booking we get as a management fee. The water bill, the HOA. The HOA is $95 a month. Property taxes, everything, every single expense that goes into the operation of that tiny home added up, and it's $1,000 a month. So anything over $1,000 a month is pure cash flow for us. So just as an example, in August, we took in $1,600. So there's $600 cash flow. September was $1,400. There's $400. October, we took in $2,000. So there's $1,000 in cash flow there. November, we're going to take in $1,400. December, we just passed the milestone. We're just barely over that $1,000 mark. Even January, we just booked the last weekend in January. That just blows my mind because, you know, that somebody wants to go out on the mountain where it's probably going to be snowing and bad weather and stay in a tiny home in January is amazing. But we booked all 4 weekends. So we are approaching, we're just maybe $100 shy of that $1,000 mark for January. So the way I look at it is, if we can cover our expenses in January, then, you know, May, June, July, August is going to look really, really good next year.
You've still got a lot of time to market January, Cindy.
Yeah. Oh, we are.
So that's a really good, I mean, the ratios are good. You've got good, solid cash flow. So how, in the management fee, does that include the cleaning fee between your guests?
Yes, that
Okay.
includes everything. That includes, they upload we have to pay for the pictures initially. They will upload the pictures onto their in-house website. It's called retreatvacation.com, I think. Don't quote me on that. They upload the pictures, they write up the listing description, they put the listing on their website, they also put it on Airbnb and VRBO, and then they handle all guest communications, which that's huge right there.
Yeah.
And then they schedule every single cleaning. Even when we go up there to use it, which is pretty rare because it's always booked, but when my husband Max and I go up there to use it, they see that it is owner reserved, and they'll go in there and clean after us as well. And they just take it out of our monthly expenses, so, or our account. So they handle, when I say they handle everything, they really handle everything. Now, if there is a repair that's necessary, they will coordinate calling the repair people and getting them in there.
Mm-hmm.
Of course, we have to pay for the repair,
Right.
But you know, the fact that I don't have to try to, you know, get a guy to come out and service the HVAC unit from when I'm in Nashville and they're in Monteagle is huge for me. You know, the people who run the management program, Lacey Pickett is her name, and she has become a dear friend. She and her sister Shay, they are wonderful people. These people that run the management program and a lot of the realtors, they're local there. They are local residents that, you know, the development has hired to work, and they have found just some rock star people to run this retreat.
Well, do you think well, let me put it a different way. Is this going to be kind of a test property that you're going to wait and see how it does over 12 months, 18 months or whatever before you buy more, or are you going to buy more?
One of the things I have learned with time is don't jump in with both feet and don't put all my eggs in one basket. So yes, the answer to your question is we're going to let this season and see how it performs over the course of a year or so. Meanwhile, I have bought another property on a lake at Timsford Lake in the area. It's about 30, 40 minutes from the tiny home down in the valley. Beautiful area. We're going to build, well, our house is under construction right now. And so that's going to take most, if not all, of my working capital to construct that house. And by the time it gets finished next spring, it's going to go on the rental program there on the lake. They have a very similar in-house rental program. And as soon as I free up that capital after that house construction finishes, then I will immediately take a look at putting that second tiny home on the lot there at Deer Lick Falls.
Okay, well, so that sounds like a plan. It sounds like a reasonable test. It takes,
Yes.
whenever you're doing something new, and this is kind of new as far as the real estate investing world goes, you're smart to do a test. And like you said, don't put all your eggs in one basket. So
No.
that, I mean, that's one of the things that we've talked about a number of times is that you need to pivot, but you need to pivot smartly.
Right.
During this time. Let me ask you this. Do you have what you consider an ideal property mix, as far as if you're talking to someone who wants to have different types of rental properties, maybe not all single family homes or not all apartments? Do you have a mix that you like, or do you think it's just dependent on each individual person?
I think it's very dependent on each individual person. I do not like being a long-term landlord. I never had any major property problems with the 5 rental houses, which I subsequently sold, by the way. But it was stressful for me to know that at any moment in the middle of the night, I could get that call saying, you know, my hot water heater's broken down, or it's 100 degrees outside and the HVAC stopped working. For me, that's a level of stress that I don't want. But someone else, I have a great friend here in Nashville, Doug Betty, and a lot of others. Doug's got over 100, long-term rentals in his portfolio. He's just, it depends on how you're wired. And I think that discovering how you're wired kind of takes time. So, I've gravitated in this direction, and a big part of it is me and how I like to operate and my tolerance for risk. So, my mix right now is really heavily weighted on these short-term rentals. But as I said, I don't want to put within that genre, I don't want to put all my eggs in one basket. So I'm not going to be running out and buying 5 tiny homes at once. I'm spreading those out in different locations. So we still have our footprint here in Nashville with Chateau and Monroe. And I have faith that we're going to get through COVID, and next year that's going to come back. Now, if it doesn't, I'm also making plans to pivot away from that if necessary. And that kind of makes me sad, but if I have to do it, I have to do it.
Well, I think it's good that you found your niche. People, it's kind of curious because most people look at it the exact opposite way you do. They want a tenant in there. They don't want to have to worry about getting another one for a year or two. And you're perfectly happy with the short-term rentals. And so it obviously works for you. But what have you learned from for someone that wants to go into maybe Airbnbs or short-term rentals, whatever you want to call them? What are some tips that you could give them about how to be successful with those?
First of all, you're going to live and die by your numbers. So, whether you like math or not, you really need to sit down and put those numbers down on paper to the best of your ability, and see what you think is going to happen as far as cash flow, not cash flow, how that investment looks from a numbers standpoint. And then the other thing is just, go with what you love and be open to possibilities. Look around for, I'm always looking to innovate for what's new, what's coming on the horizon, what's fading, what used to work or used to provide that steady income that is no longer doing that. Back to long-term rentals. One of the things that I don't like them in general, just personally to begin with, but now with the advent of COVID, I see a lot of these tenants out there, landlords out there who have tenants who aren't paying their rent. And I don't know, who knows how long that situation is going to last. We are in this, this climate of a huge amount of uncertainty. the biggest one of all is, we've got this election coming up, and I don't even want to talk about that, but, who knows how all of that's going to play out. And I think I just probably went down a rabbit hole away from what you asked, Sharon, but those are my thoughts.
No, that's a good answer. I think it's so interesting to talk to people who are focused on a strategy that's not what I call mainstream, because single family homes or apartment buildings, that's what a lot of people know. So what advice would you give to somebody who's on the fence? What about if they have single family homes, but they've got this tiny idea that they might want to invest in something different, like short-term rentals? What advice would you give to them?
Get on the internet and start researching all day, every day. That's what I do. Just knowledge is power. So the more knowledge you have about whatever it is you're interested in, the more power you're going to have to make that successful to the best of your ability. There's always outside forces that we can't control, but you can never have enough knowledge about whatever it is that you're looking to do. And then, this is just a little, go with your gut. When it comes right down to it, I've learned to do that. I've learned to follow my gut, because that little internal voice, idea, whatever you want to call it, I've learned to, go with it, and unless and until I see on paper that this isn't going to work, and that's when I pivot.
That's when you pivot. Well, I'll put a link to Cindy's Airbnb, her chateau on Monroe. One day, I'm hoping that we can all go back there and do that. And I'll put a link to the tiny home development too. And Cindy, what's the best way for folks to reach out to you?
You can call or text me at 615-289-6566. You can reach out to my website, www.homestylenashville.com. You can find me on social media. I'm on Facebook. Again, just search Homestyle Nashville with Cindy Maxson. You can email me at Cindy Maxson. Maxson has an S in it. So CINDYMAXSONRE for real estate @gmail.com.
Okay, that gives people a lot of ways to reach out to you. Well, folks, that's it for today. If you like this show, please share it and leave us a rating and a review over on iTunes. I would so much appreciate it. And until next time, I will see you same time, same place next week. Bye for now. And thanks, Cindy.
Thank you, Sharon.